Yo, what's up? This is another episode of 30 Minutes with the Perrys.
30 Minutes with the Perrys.
You always got to break out with songs. That's your thing.
I actually need to stop singing flat and off key. That's embarrassing to my Enneagram 3 vibes. So, I need to get better at that.
And you're actually a decent singer. Every
I
time
can carry a tune.
You can carry a tune.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't even know that.
No.
You should go ahead and bust one out for the people.
I'll pass.
Come on, babe.
No, that's cool.
Like Jackie, she be walking around the house and she like straight, like legit be hitting notes. I'm like, you can like sing if you actually like.
No, I think if I got lessons, I could probably, I can get away with some things. I could be like Drake. Drake ain't hitting no runs and stuff like that, but he's like in pitch all the time.
God gave Jackie like 90 gifts. Straight up and down.
Anywho, me and Preston were watching this series on Netflix. The series will go unnamed. But there was this part of the show where this guy who's married, him and his wife are going through some things.
Some things.
Some stuff. And, it was causing tension and disconnection in the marriage. And while he was at work, one of his coworkers was kind of around him, like around his desk. And there was like this odd energy in the scene.
Lurking.
Yeah, it was this odd energy where they kind of liked being around each other, but they weren't saying that. And like they were kind of like lingering and like never saying nothing like, explicitly bogus.
Right.
But it was kind of like, ooh, y'all need to stop that.
Yeah.
And I paused and I told Preston, I said, that right there is how people get caught up in all kinds of mess because they don't guard their heart in marriage.
Because Jackie will pause the show in a minute.
I had to get my idea out.
From one scene and like preach a mini sermon and then press play.
I got to get it out.
I had to get that out. It's like, dang, okay.
And so I was like, man, this would be a good podcast topic about how to guard your heart in marriage.
We haven't only seen it, on TV. We've seen it in real life as well.
Everybody,
yeah.
There's so much opposition spiritually to the unity that God intends for two people to have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Let's first say, what does it mean to guard your heart? Even the Bible says, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. I think I've messed that verse up.
Probably.
But the Bible tells us to guard ourselves. What does that, just practically, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think it means to do the necessary things that we need to not put ourselves in positions where we would have to choose sin over righteousness. You know what I'm saying? Because I think a lot of times sin starts with us putting ourselves in a position where something might look enticing or might be tempting. And so it's like, man, you're not really guarding your heart if you go to a place where women are going to be all loosey-goosey when you've dealt with lust in the past.
Yeah, it's like guarding your heart is this. If you know that you struggle with gluttony, guarding your heart would be like, I probably shouldn't go to Golden Corral today.
Right. Or when the Krispy Kreme like ready sign, hot sign is on.
Let me keep driving.
You probably just got to keep driving and don't look right.
Yeah. Like you're not guarding your heart because you put yourself in a position to be tempted.
Absolutely.
Unnecessarily.
Right.
And so a part of guarding your heart is a self-awareness, knowing what's enticing, knowing what triggers you, knowing what could lead you astray from truth, the gospel, God, your spouse, whatever, and moving accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now when we apply that to marriage, guarding your heart in marriage means never putting yourself in the position to sin against God and sin against your spouse, guarding yourself from whatever would break that commitment that you make.
Yeah. That's good. I think also too, what guarding our hearts can look like is doing the best we can to not always compare our spouses with other people.
So that's a way to guard your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like if your spouse falls short in this area, to not always look at men who excel where your spouse kind of fails at times.
Oh yeah.
Because I think that kind of like, oh, such and such does this, why you don't do this?
Yeah.
It's like, no, like that person that's probably excelling in the area probably didn't always excel in the area. They were able to grow.
I think a part of that temptation to compare your spouse to another person is like covetousness a little bit, where it's like, you do X, Y, and Z wrong. I think homeboy did or does X, Y, and Z right. I wish you were homeboy or homeboy was you.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that literally is when you start going there, it starts to get a little bad, because you know why? What that does is it starts to make you discontent with the person you're married to.
Absolutely.
And that all types of sin can come out of that.
Yeah. And I think the devil is so crafty. He works with our impatience, and he works with the things that we covet, right? And the devil is the type of lame that would send the right person along that will give you the attention or will impress you in ways that your spouse doesn't, and lead your heart away from your spouse.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it's just not fair, right? Because you don't know, like, this person that you're super impressed with, right? You don't know what process they went through. You know what I'm saying?
And you don't know them.
Right.
Let's be clear. I was watching, I told you about this while watching. I watched this old episode of Oprah on YouTube. It's probably still on there. And she had a round table with men who had cheated on their wives. That was the first episode. The second episode was a round table with women who were mistresses. And it was so interesting.
I think I remember seeing something like that when I was little.
Because she kept asking all these men, why did they cheat? And they would be like, basically like the mistress, like every time I would come over, she would cook for me. She would listen to me. She wasn't, nagging and all of this. Like, she basically gave him everything they wanted in their wife. And the crazy thing, I was like, they're so deceived though, because if they were to get in a relationship with these women and be around this woman, she would also become the same way as your wife, because she's a human being. Like, she's giving you all of this because y'all only seeing each other 2 hours a week.
Right.
You don't even know her. You're not even committed to her. Like, she's only giving you a little bit.
Yeah.
And so to expect that your mistress will not also become just, I don't know.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Basically what you're trying to say is, like, our impatience and our lack of content makes us not content in who delusional and not content in who we're with. And so we find what we're missing in other people, not realizing that if we get into a relationship with this other person, they're gonna feel
they got problems
in a whole
too.
Different
Exactly.
Set of ways.
The grass ain't never greener.
The grass ain't never greener on the other side. And so, but the devil and our sinfulness would like to convince us that it is, because we're impatient and we don't want to grow with the people that we're with.
Hello, we don't want to work.
We don't wanna work.
I get it though. Like, obedience is hard. I think another way to guard your heart, well, I'll say this. I think in light of the whole covetousness piece and the discontentment, is being careful even when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
Like, who you follow.
Absolutely.
Because I think that could breed some like jealousy and all types of stuff, where you see like, this dude taking this wife out on all these trips and got roses on the bed, which is a hot mess anyway, because who gonna clean it up? Getting her chocolates, and you like, he don't never take me on trips. He don't never put roses on my bed. He don't never. But it's like, but he paying your bills, and he rubs your back, and he takes care of your children, and he's faithful at church. Like,
right.
He may not be able to be uber romantic, but he's responsible.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so like there's always something good that covetousness will keep you from actually seeing.
Yeah, that's really good.
And that's
really good. I think social media is a really big piece, especially when it comes to men, because I think men, we tend, not always, but typically we tend to be very visual people. And so a lot of times we can even grow a discontentment of our wives seeing, different women's body types,
right,
and different women, looking a certain way. And so like, I think that sometimes, like you said, we have to really watch who we follow on social media, because it can become a thing. But also too, I think one thing that can help us guard our hearts in marriage is dealing with the trauma of our past.
Explain.
I say dealing with the trauma of our past because I think what happens is sometimes we can get into marriage and not dealt with the trauma of our past. And I think what happens is when we get married, this person who becomes the closest person to us has the power to affect us in ways that nobody in the world can, right? Mm-hmm. You're more vulnerable in this relationship than any other relationship in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of times with men and women, right, is that the moment our spouses disappoint us, it triggers like this lifelong trauma that we had even before we got in this marriage. And we seek outside sources to satisfy us instead of dealing with like your wife disappointed you or your husband disappointed you, not because what they did to you was so detrimental. It's that you never dealt with the little hurt boy.
My God.
In you.
My God.
You never dealt with that little hurt girl in you.
Yeah.
And so you came into marriage with all this bondage.
Yeah.
And the moment they disappointed you, it felt like the
world crashed.
The world crashed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I've seen a lot of men do that. That, when their women reject them, it's like, what you have done is you have associated this rejection with all of your mommy hurt. And so what you do, you go look and find a woman that won't reject you in the same way that
my God.
Instead of dealing with your trauma and say, man, your rejection of me makes me feel like when my mom abandoned me, right? And instead of dealing with that and becoming a whole person, you want to go outside your marriage.
Yeah, I mean, that is a way to guard your heart, is to trace the feeling to its source.
Absolutely.
Right? So one of my triggers with you is to feel like if you say, Jackie, can you go do X, Y, and Z? If it feels like you are trying to control me, I will always resist it, which will look like or be a form of being unsubmissive, right?
Right.
And what somebody can say, oh, she's just a rebellious woman. I've had to trace back to being abused and not wanting to feel like a man was trying to control me.
Right.
And so now I have to go back to that place and say, okay, God, this is the wound. This is some pain mixed with some sin. I need to help me to not feel like Preston is trying to control me when really he's just asking me, can I close the refrigerator door?
Because it's a difference between your wife deeply wounding you and your wife triggering wounds that you've never dealt with.
Yes.
It's a difference.
Yikes. Wow. Whoa.
It's a difference.
Truth bomb.
And so
mic drop.
Right? It's a difference. And so what I'm not saying is that she didn't sin against you. I'm not saying that she didn't hurt you in some type of way or form or fashion. What I am saying is how deeply you were affected points to something way deeper.
Yeah.
It's that unhealed version of yourself that you've never dealt with. And so you're looking for a woman that will not disappoint you in the same way or who won't reject you in the same way, who will rub your back when your wife said no. And it's like, nah, bro. Your wife ain't really the problem. You the problem.
In an earlier episode, we had a real small banter about fragility. And this isn't to boo-boo on men. But
it's about the boo-boo on men.
I think we need to address the emotional fragility of men, because I see adultery on the part of a man as a weakness. You are a weak man if you cannot withstand rejection to the point that you are willing to betray your spouse, your family, and your God just to be coddled. That's a problem to me.
Well,
you disagree? That's weak.
50-50, I disagree with you.
Okay, what's the other 50?
So I think I don't think, okay, let me say this. I'm not saying that it's not a form of weakness. I just think that it's deeper than that.
Of course it is.
Right. And what I mean is, I think a word that kind of fits better with me in my mind is wounded. a person who was wounded. Hear me out. A person who was wounded and a person who was never given the tools to learn how to deal with their wounds. Now, I do think that the point of you feeling like you have to go outside of your marriage to cheat on somebody is trash, which is weak. But I'm saying the motive.
It is a weakness because you are unable to withstand temptation.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
That's a weakness.
Okay, now I get what you're saying. Yes.
So you are so fragile to the point that because she said no, you cannot withstand. You can't endure it. You can't handle it. Your identity is breaks apart. So it's like, oh, I gotta go out and do this so I can feel like a man again. That's not manhood. That's little boy behavior.
Yeah,
and I feel like we gotta just call it for what it is.
Yeah.
And I understand that the context is that a lot of men have not been discipled or fathered to be actual men. Mm-hmm. Like even C.S. Lewis said how like humans, because they always give in to temptation, that it really reveals how weak and how fragile they actually are, versus Jesus, who endured temptation for 33 years and never once submitted to it. That's actual manhood.
Yeah.
That's actual strength.
Absolutely.
And so I'm done boo-booing on men, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I do think that it is weakness, you know what I'm saying? Which we're all kind of born weak, right? And we're born loving the things that God hates and hating the things that God loves. I think the problem comes in when when society teaches us that a real man is not rejected by women, right? So I think a lot of that plays into society teaching men that, you know, a woman shouldn't reject you. A woman should want you all the time and yada, yada, yada. And so when your wife rejects you, you feel like she's rejected your whole being, but she's just tired.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She's just tired, bro.
Raising your kids.
Her back just hurt. You know what I'm saying? And so we want to go outside, you know, our marriage because, But I agree. It's weakness.
I think on the other end, I appreciate that. I think on the other end, though, me and Preston were talking about this. It's not to say that women don't commit adultery, because they do.
I was just about to ask you that.
But
I'm not letting y'all off the hook.
Don't. But I do think that from my experience, women are less likely to cheat on a man because of their hurt. But what I do see is that they will begin to withhold their time and emotional energy as a response. So if a woman feels rejected, if a woman feels unsafe, if a woman is frustrated, she most likely will not go entertain a man or pull up a pornography video. And some do. So this isn't like a monolith, but it is what I've seen and experienced is that, you know, you're just not going to get a lot of energy from me. And so if I have a job, I'm going to put a lot of my energy into that job. If I know how to make money, I'm going to put a lot of my energy into making money.
Not committing adultery, but cheating on your husband with your work.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But not even my work, just my time and my emotional availability. I'll become more emotionally available to my friendships and not you. And so I think that's one way for a woman to kind of numb herself, is to simply just be like, oh, that's what we doing? Cool.
So how can a woman guard her heart to prevent that?
You got to notice when it's happening. Like, cause some of it is a coping mechanism that you might be used to, so you don't even know when it's happening. You know, and so I think you have to become aware of yourself, where it's like, oh, I'm starting to withdraw. So like identifying that and then immediately going to the Father for help. God, I feel myself wanting to close myself from my husband out of fear, because that's what's under it, is I don't want to be hurt, so I need to close off myself so you can't wound me again. But what happens is, as I close off myself so I don't get wounded, I also close off myself from the ability to love you. And so I can't guard myself and love you at the same time, which is mad frustrating.
I hope this question makes sense. Do you think there is, what are the practical implications we can do in each other's lives to help each other
As spouses?
guard. Yeah, spouses to help each other guard. Like, so for example, if you know that your husband, I don't think it's a woman's job to coddle their husband in a way that would
Comfort, yes. Coddle, no.
comfort, not coddle, right?
Yep.
She shouldn't do the necessary things in her marriage so her husband wouldn't cheat. That shouldn't be her burden, right? Like, he should go to God with that, right?
Facts.
And have a conviction from God. But do you think that there is a concern that we should have with saying, man, I shouldn't just want my husband to guard his heart around other women or being tempted around other women? Is it something that I can do as a woman that can assist him and help him? Or do you think it solely falls on us to guard our own hearts in marriage? Because a lot of men that I've talked to have said things along the lines of like, yeah, I know it's my own sin when I look at this woman or when I fantasize about this woman, but I feel like when my wife is having sex with me or when my wife is not rejecting me so much, it's not as much of a temptation.
Yeah, I think we're all continual products of nature and nurture. It is our nature to sin. It is our nature to go against God's design and act out in all kinds of ways. Yet at the same time, God has given us a new nature where we are supposed to resist that and put it to death, right? But we also are products of nurture, which is how we were raised, the culture we grew up in, the neighborhood we have, the family line that we come in. And this nurture even exists in marriage. Am I nurturing my husband in such a way that leads him or helps him to choose God? Or am I nurturing my husband in such a way where I'm continually sinning against him, so he's sinning against me in response? Woo! And so I do think it's both.
That's really good.
It's both.
That's really good, because a lot of men, and I think men are much more complex individuals than society gives us credit for.
For sure.
Because
you're made in the image of God.
Right. Because they will paint this picture. I think I kind of said this on another podcast. They will paint this picture that we're just sexual beings, but it's like, no, like a man wants to feel nurtured and love and affection too. You know what I'm saying?
Does too.
And a woman does too.
Because that's getting to what the whole point is that we are really, really, really needy people.
Yes.
All of us as human beings, we are needy. We want love. We want comfort. We want affection. We want security.
Yeah.
And what happens is, like you said earlier, is because I've given you myself in marriage, the pain hurts that much deeper.
Yeah.
And so I'm tempted to act out in crazier ways because of that vulnerability. But I think at the end of all of this, or at the bottom of all of this, is that we need to develop a reverence and a fear from God. Because I think sometimes we could like land the plane on love your spouse so that your spouse will love you back, or honor your spouse, which is all good and well.
Yeah.
But I have to love God more than I love you.
Yeah.
Because if I don't love God more than I love you, what happens when I stop loving you?
Yeah.
I'm more tempted to sin against God. And so there has to be some inner integrity so that I'm guarding my heart in private. Like I'm guarding my heart in ways that you will never know or never see, because I'm first and foremost honoring the Lord.
And this is the reason why, I don't know if this is getting a little off topic of guarding our hearts, but this is the reason why women and men of God, please do not be tempted to fall in love with somebody who does not love Jesus. Because when that love for you kind of fades, they have no other love to fall on.
Yeah. No strength
to fall on.
The Spirit.
And so that's one way in which we can guard our hearts as Christians. We have a consistent standard to look to. I don't hurt you simply because I love you. I don't hurt you because I have a moral standard to look to, right? And even when I do hurt you, I'm not just affected because you're affected. I'm affected because God is affected that I hurt his image bearer. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just it's more weight, you know what I'm saying, on it.
Because if it takes some mind renewal, but when you start to trace the way you treat your spouse to your relationship with God, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because then you see, the way I treat my spouse literally is an outworking of what I believe about God. Oof. And so like, yes, accountability, thumbs up. Yes, putting, you know, the little control things on your computer. Do that. Yes, like going to marriage retreats and all the things. I think all of that helps, but it will only help insofar as you love God.
Yeah.
And so like a part of the whole thing is, let me start to stir up my affections for God so that I'm really, really like out here walking in holiness at all times.
Because in guarding your heart, you can put all of those parameters in place.
Yeah.
But if your
heart ain't changed, you're gonna do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna find hurdles you're gonna jump over those hurdles. You're gonna jump over those, those things. And so God has to be the standard. If God is not the standard of what we get our morality and our moral standard from, like, it's going to be so hard to guard your heart in marriage because we don't have a moral standard of goodness, and so we have to consistently look towards the one who is good, and we have to be affected by the things that affect his heart. If we're not affected, it's going to be really hard to guard our hearts in marriage.
Legit. Okay, let me say this, and then we could close. I think a really important part. Okay, so Psalms 1 says, "Blessed are those who walk not in the counsel of the wicked, nor sit in the seat of scoffers, or stand in the way of sinners." And I mentioned that psalm because who we do life with, mainly our friends, like that is a way to guard our heart too. And so
that's really good.
How would you say your male friend, like what are, okay, I'll say this.
So good.
Are there particular male friendships that you will not engage with, and particular male friendships that you will engage with that have served you in your marriage?
I'm so glad that you asked this question, wife.
You're welcome.
Because I was just having a conversation with the guy, my friend yesterday about this. And we were on the phone, and he was talking about his wife, and he said something, and I kind of corrected him. I don't want to say what he said or whatever, but I corrected him, and he was like, "Man, I'm so glad you my friend." He was like, because I used to have friends who would just like let me just talk about my wife and not giving me a different perspective, but like show me the things in my heart that I need to change. You know what I'm saying? And he does the same thing for me, and I have like 6 or 7 good male friends that do that for me. Ezekiel, like I have and so I don't even dudes who have a certain way of thinking, and dudes who
can I say something you told me a long time ago?
Yeah.
When we were in Chicago, we were talking about somebody. And you was like, you know why I can't rock with him? And I was like, why? And you were like, because he never talks about his wife.
Yes.
He never honors his wife.
Absolutely.
And I was like, huh.
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Even how, like, when I first became a Christian and I first started to go in Christian circles, right? And I started to be around popular Christians, non-popular Christians, meeting people a lot. I started to notice that the men who were who were the most emotionally healthy were the people who celebrated their wives and talked about their wives in such an honoring way. And the men who didn't, I started to see red flags that said, man, maybe you won't be beneficial for me as a close friend.
And you remember that person is divorced now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there is a man now, a type of man now that I become cool with faster when they have a deep reverence for God and a deep honoring for their wife that lets me know that, man, if I become friends with this dude, he's going to encourage me to honor and love my wife, right? And so it's been times where I've been around men like that, and I have left convicted to be a better husband and to flee temptation, right, by being around them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That was one of the things that, when we had dinner with not the name drop, Kirk Franklin.
The way he talked about his wife.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Like, people were like, oh, like, well, you got to meet Kirk Franklin. You know what I'm saying? You got.
He literally talked about Tammy.
Yeah. No, like literally, he didn't talk about none of his hits. He didn't talk about none of his
Yeah.
Grammys. He just talked about how he loved his wife. And it was encouraging for me as a young man to see an older man still in love with his wife. You know what I'm saying? And not only did he talk about his wife, but he talked about the leadership that he had to be under. You know what I'm saying? For years that helped him be content and to help him grow and to help him be stretched in order to grow in a certain, space with his wife over the course of years. And so, that's a great question, because I think who we surround ourselves around will help us guard our hearts and help us honor our spouses in a way that can help us have longevity in our marriage.
Yeah, and I think the same for women. I think women have to be mindful and discerning about being in friendship with and having conversations with people that is also equally honoring. Because I do think it's a temptation, and some of it is needed. Some of it is needed to say, hey, homie is frustrating me in this way. But you need to have a friend who will help you to not just land on the frustration, but also moving towards how to serve and pray for and help your husband in light of the way he's frustrating you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I think conversations with women can be real specific and therefore highly critical. And so you don't want to get in the habit of always criticizing your spouse. Just because it doesn't serve you in the long run. And so I think friendships are hugely important and how we guard ourselves. Because there's this one couple we knew, the wife is just, doing a lot, just showing out on social media, showing skin and doing a lot and just being,
Right.
highly disrespectful to her husband. And I said, I wonder what kind of friend she has. And then I found out the friend she has, and I said, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because I knew that individual was somebody that was gassing that behavior and not putting water on it and saying, nah, sis, like, don't sin against your spouse, even in the way you speak.
Yeah.
And so,
if a man doesn't have men in their life who will consistently challenge them when they start to complain about their wives or try to complain about what their wives are not doing, and never have a friend to say, man, maybe you're being a little bit domineering right here. Maybe you need to stop being as controlling. Or, bro, you need to be more patient. It'd be real hard for us to not guard our hearts when someone comes around and offers us all the things that that we love and we want, when we think the whole issue is our wives and not us. You know what I'm saying?
Go.
And so, yeah.
what's that Golden Girl song?
No, I don't know the Golden Girl.
I don't know that song, but I do know You Got a Friend in Me. You got a friend in me. Wow. Bye.
Hey, that wasn't a note.
No. It wasn't.
You be trying to play me. Peace.